So, well, I don't know which language to choose. Would you like me to speak? I'm a native Finn, so I'm more than happy to speak in Finnish. How many there are who do not speak Finnish? Okay, 2. Let's we do in Finland so that we consider those 2 very, very important persons. So I give this speech in English. English, yes, that's what I thought. English, yes. Not other languages. Swedish is okay also, but I prefer English. Okay, diversified capital market ecosystem. Let's give me a tiny background. I turned 59 years last Monday, so I'm old enough to consider that I have seen quite many crises inside the financial market, because I have been working now nearly 40 years in financial market. First in banking, I started as a corporate analyst, and then I worked in different management positions. I also worked very long time in a pension system here in Finland. The longest period I was chief investment officer in charge of entirely investment side of pension Fennia. After the merger, I wanted to have more concentrated position, and I told that I will build up to Elo the best possible corporate finance system, and that's what I did. I was also in charge of VCs. When I was doing that job, I decided, well, now it has happened what I have been waiting for 36 years. So now I'm going to tell how I consider and why I created my own company at the age of 58. So I think that's an interesting story. First of all, operational environment has changed a lot to SMEs, and I have to say I consider here more and less SMEs and growth companies. I know most of the listed companies, they know exactly well the capital market. They have huge and plenty of opportunities, but I'm going to concentrate to SMEs, to growth companies. And why is that? Most of those companies are those who employ more people. They here inside Europe we have a problem with unemployment, and SMEs are those who create jobs. Also here in Finland we have extremely diversified and well-known technology startup commune, and we have so many companies who have the equity value of between 2 million and 100 million, and which have a great future. I also consider that here in Finland we have an extremely good system which Finland, the government has created to help the startup commune and to help especially the financing. It's not only Tekes, but Finvera also changed their rules 2015. Before that they were supposed to invest to Lapland and eastern part of Finland, but now they more and less they concentrate a lot to growth companies, to those companies who export. Okay. The financial market has diversified a lot. Inside Europe, the capital market change of the process is going to be different than what it was in the United States. The change really started, kicked off 2008 after the financial crisis. Let's take here a few slides which you might have seen already here. This is a slide which tells that last year 216 million the startup VC money came to Finnish startup commune or to Finnish growth companies. And that 216 million from foreigners, it was given to 16 companies. So the size of the deals were very high. Please note the 10 million, the 80 million VC money from Finland, and then we have the biggest angel network here in Finland. If you take a look, 53 million last year. And please note, only 40% out of those who belong to angel commune are answering to this statistic. Then please also note that our company, we do growth financing. We advise growth financing. Last Monday, we announced a deal, MariaDB, which was the biggest deal done in Nordic countries, biggest deal to growth company. It was 25 million euros. And you can see out of the ticket size that the size of the tickets has been growing to these growth companies. You should double check MariaDB, because Montevidenius had 2 daughters. The other one is Mai, as I think you know MySQL, and the other one is Maria. He doesn't have 3rd daughter, he has a son, so we wait and see what is going to be 3rd. But that's also a very good story which tells that you can create a company also at a later age. Okay, so a lot of VC money coming to Finland, and then when I have a very, very long background as an investor, I entirely see that in the world at the moment, here you see this is from Morgan Stanley research. You see the developed markets growth. The growth is not going to be as much as it was at the beginning of 2000. There were a period of 5% economical growth. It was more and less because of the emerging markets. The world growth was around 5%. Now the growth is going to be less, but it's going to be very stable. And I at least see that the 2 next years are going to be much, much better in the world growth. We have Trump, we have other type of Brexit and that, but if you take a look of the market has been very stable and very good one. I at least consider the market is very suitable to growth companies and for the investments. Okay, what has changed? First of all, the regulation. I have to say, the regulation obviously is extremely important in the financial sector, extremely important. Regulation, as everyone inside this room knows, limits the bank's ability to give financing, especially to those companies which still have a negative cash flow and more or less to SME companies. But poor economic growth forecast in Finland and in Europe has also created European Union startup money. And that's huge. Who has the deepest pocket in Europe? Absolutely European Investment Bank. It's a AAA rated bank. Who in this room works in the AAA rated bank? Who used to work in a AAA rated bank? I think quite many of my old friends from Postipankki used to work in a AAA rated bank. But at least that's a AAA rated bank. They are not looking after profits. So that means that their financing to the growth companies which they do today is cheaper than the market price. Are they destroying market? No. But what I say is that when I left pension company Elo, I told to the board that my dream is to have as much as possible growth financing from European Investment Bank to Finland. Why? Because in the rankings of loans, you have the senior loans, then you have the junior loans, and then you have the equity. And this EIB money, part of that can be, like in MariaDB deal, part of that was capital loan according to Finnish legislation, osakeyhtiölain pykälä XXX mukaan. So that was included, it's equity in a way. It's equity which you can put include into your equity in calculations. Part of that is equity. What is the return target of EIB? It's less than the VCs. Then they have a junior share class after that, which is also priced less than venture debt. The hidden rules are less problematic from the company or from a growth company point of view, because EIB is financing only growth. Do they have a covenants? No. They only limit taking in the money if you do not growth. But you are able to say yourself how much you are going to growth. So that's the main point why I think in Finland at least it's going to look much, much brighter in the coming years. Digitalization is obviously one thing, but it makes also very difficult the SME and startup commune's life because the market is extremely diversified. These solutions do not, please note people, these solutions do not compete with each other. These solutions complement each other. And now I think more the bank people here consider why on earth I have all the banks here with a very, very tiny. Usually you see a slide where banks are roughly 70% out of the European financial markets. But please note, I concentrate here to growth companies. And so the bank's role has been much less, but I come back with this in a moment. Then obviously you have the seed funds. Thank you, Tekes, Fund of Fund. We have extremely many seed funds in Finland, and people, please note, those are also investing to different sectors. As I said, we have a wide range of companies in Finland. They are not gaming companies. We have now funded roughly 40 companies during this bit over 1 year, and we have had none game companies. There are wide possibilities. And here are not all the seed funds. Then we have accelerators. And I think my friend Maria is sitting here, here in front. She's running an accelerator in Frankfurt. I think you should absolutely talk with her. The accelerator business is something which the large companies use and the small companies use. Please note that when people say that the companies are not investing to research and development. Do I agree? Partly. But the point is that the research and development is different today than it was before. Now it's more and more looking after startups and partnering with them so that they get the solution more from the partners from startups. Then we have VCs. We have extremely many good VCs already. It's a very functioning system. But please note the VCs here in Finland are still quite tiny. I would say none of them is able to organize a 10 million round. And that's why I think this EIB money is excellent from the company, from the VC point of, and from the company the old owner's point of view. Because it leverages. Private equity, very good one, and very well organized already here in Finland. Then we have here, obviously, the foreign VCs, where the foreign VCs are very, very active here in Finland, extremely active, as private equity companies also. Then I have here pension funds and policy companies separately because their regulation differs from banks' regulation. And for example, policy companies are very keen on doing junior loans, but no equity. Why? Because of that regulation. Then we have some loan funds, I think, or loan equity funds, family offices, yes, but family offices in Finland are much smaller than in many other countries, as we all know. Then we have a very interesting, this crowdfunding. Please note, listed equity market is also crowdfunding, but the regulation is different. The crowdfunding is the biggest one point which is going to change the European capital market. Why? In US, you have to be a professional investor. You are able to, so professional is investor. What is a professional investor? I used to be, as a chief investment officer, I used to be a professional investor. In US, it's only for professional investors, and the maximum amount is 1 million. Here in Europe, whoever is able to invest at the crowd in the crowd funding. So if you have a company, unlisted company, in one of those platforms, they are able to create 5 million euros in equity or in debt per year. 5 million euros in Finland as an equity. It's a huge amount of money. And that's going to change the market. Obviously, I have been discussing with local authors because I have been working so very long time already. I told them to try to find up the Hankia case and take a look at what happened. That was a case in 90s when investors lost the money with the Hankia bond, but the bank then paid back to the investors because at that time the regulation was a bit different to the banks. Okay, so here you have so many platforms today that I don't even know them myself. You have debt platforms and you have equity platforms, which operate in Finland and which operate around in Europe. And what I'm waiting most at the moment is going to be Nordic listed market. Why? If you take a look of Stockholm, Oslo, Copenhagen, Helsinki, listed equity market, what is the difference? In Helsinki, nothing happens compared to Stockholm, Oslo. The market is huge, the liquidity is huge. That's, by the way, the reason why I consider everyone ought to invest her or himself, let's say 5% of the pension liability, because by investing you learn, and by investing we get more good companies, good liquidity. But what I'm looking for at the moment, I have been waiting the Helsinki equity market to turn up. Yes, it has been now turning up a bit, it looks much brighter, but I'm looking for a Nordic market, and I know there is a platform which is supposed to be a platform which is going to be a Nordic platform, so the company which is listed here in Helsinki, the shares can be sold around Nordic markets, and that's going to be a very good point to unlisted equity market. Unfortunately, the regulation here in Finland has not really considered listing as one of the good points from the company point of view. Then here, last but not least, we have the governments, the European Union, European Investment Bank, the European Investment Fund. We have the Finnish Teollisuussijoitus, Tekes, Finnvera, ELY-keskukset, whatever. We have so many of them here in Finland. I hope I have a time for a tiny joke. There was a Chinese delegation here in Finland. They came up to Finland and asked how it's possible that you have so many great good companies here in Finland and startups. Did you, by the way, know that Helsinki was the 5th city in the world where the Chinese built up their own hub? So the Chinese and Asian countries are very active here in Helsinki at the moment. But anyway, so the Chinese delegation came to Finland and they wanted to know how it's possible to create so extremely many good companies. And after 5 days, they have visited ELY, they have visited Finnvera, they have visited Tekes, Teollisuussijoitus, and you name it. And the head of the delegation said after 5 days, well, considering that you have only 5 million people, you have a very, very difficult and complicated system. So I think here in Finland we really should consider that 5 million is not a lot. Okay, so but that's also the problem from the startups' point of view. Then I think Vesa from Nordea, a growth company banking, should take a look of this. By the way, I have to say thank you to Nordea because they have created this growth company concept, which I think is going to be a very, very good to from the growth company's point of view and from the Finland point of view. But anyway, now EIB, European Investment Bank, has created another solution to companies. You see, the EIB money which we do are most and less to companies which are where the need is more than 7.5 million euros. But please note, growth is very expensive. The first case we did with EIB, Frosmo, they had a turnover of 2.5 million 2015. 2016 summer, they took a credit from EIB, which was 8.5 million. So you have to ask yourself how it was possible. Turnover 2.5 billion, a negative cash flow, and they took a credit of 8.5 million. I don't have time to tell it now, but I can tell it later. If I have time, I tell. But anyway, this EIB, EIF new money, which is allocated through the Finnish banks, so Osuuspankki started last year, Nordea started now. It's extremely good money from the company point of view, because it's 0.5% guarantee to the SME company. Is 0.5 guarantee cheap? Yes, that's much cheaper than Finnvera. Finnvera guarantee is roughly 3% to the growth company. So it's very, and 50% is guaranteed by EIB, which is AAA rated. So the only problem bank has, they shouldn't take any profit or any basis point plus that 3.8. But anyway, so plus this EIB guarantee of 50%, Finnvera is able to guarantee 30%, and the bank has to have 20%. And I'm sure this is going to be extremely good to the growth companies. But please note, the bank is that who decides which kind of risk policy they have. So it's a bank's decision what kind of companies are getting that financing. And I have a joke here in Finland saying that when we have 2.5 banks, and then everyone is asking, what is that 0.5 bank? I said, well, you can decide it yourself. But that only tells that the competition in Finland is not very huge. But I think this financing is going to be extremely good to the Finnish companies. Okay, then I think, should I, where was am I over time already? Okay, fine. Wait a minute. I think it was, I'm just about done, yeah, okay. What has happened after financial crisis, when we advise the companies, especially growth companies, we very much take a look of the order, the ranking order of the loans, what kind of loan they have, and what kind of capital loan they have, what kind of equity they have, and what kind of plan they have to have the next equity round. And we try to achieve a situation where the case is bankable. Okay, how we put together a bankable case to a Finnish bank and a bankable case to EIB, which is looking 3 or 4 times growth. How it's done? Well, it's done so, as everyone knows, always the companies have a different presentation to equity investors. They have a different presentation to EIB. Why? They have a different presentation to banks. Why? Because if you have money, then you are able to grow. So our target is only to try to solve the problems of those companies who are able to grow. It's not you are willing to grow, who are able to grow. And that's the reason why we must have several type of Excel solutions depending on the money, how much we get in. We try to do the life cycle financing. Unfortunately, we are not able to do the startups because we do not have resources. We have 4 people at the moment and 1 assistant, so there is 5 of us, but there is a lot of work to do because a lot of these companies do not have so very good financial systems, that's a reason why it's a lot of work. But as I have said, I'm extremely happy to be able to tell you about this market situation. I find it myself also a bit difficult because there are coming more and more solutions all the time. I think I stop here because I have a couple of slides. Thank you very much. Have a very good day. And I don't know if you share the slides. Okay.